Hello, everyone. Welcome again to KuirthiyTV. Thanks for joining us again. In this episode, I'm talking with two outstanding and inspirational South Sudanese women, Aluel Atem and Nyajuok Tongyik. We'll be talking about feminism and patriarchy in the South Sudanese society. For many people, this is a very uncomfortable topic. For many people, this is a topic they don't want to have at all. But I think feminism in the South Sudanese society is something we cannot ignore, given the nature of our society as a male-dominated society. So we'll be exploring these topics, and we hope to inspire conversations around this topic. Nyajuok Tongyik is a South Sudanese American. She's a retired Army veteran, author, financial advisor, nurse, a women's rights activist, and an inspirational speaker.
In our own South Sudan, too, we have women now that we know are making great changes. Who does not want that for their daughter? Who does not want that for their niece? Who does not want that for any woman in their lives? All these men want the same thing for them. Okay. So one thing they have to understand is that the feminism movement is not going anywhere. It's here to stay, and it's just going to get more. For the women that say, you said earlier at the beginning of this conversation, you said, you have some friends that say, I'm not a feminist. Great. They can say that all they want. But the fact that they have the ability to say that to a man, that's a work done by feminism.
Aluel Atem is a South Sudanese feminist thinker and peace-building practitioner whose work explores gender justice in post-conflict societies.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot when people say, it makes, for me, let me say it in Jiang, that, like the reason we women or girls have to be respected is because, like it's girls who are, taking care, like the boys are becoming useless. And it's girls who are responsible. And I'm like, that's a crisis, that we're not paying attention to the crisis of what the boys are going through and wanting to switch and say, I'm going to invest in my daughter because I have seen that in this years now, it's girls that are taking care of people. Or when you show up as a girl or as a young woman and showing up for your family, I really deeply get offended when I'm told that, you're like a son to us. And I'm like, why can't you just see me? Just see me. Like, I am enough as a daughter. I'm just enough. Just see me,
Hello, everyone. Thanks again for those of you who will be watching this. I want to welcome Aluel and Nyajuok to this conversation. I want to thank you for joining us in this important conversation. This is something I think many South Sudanese will benefit from. So I want to begin by asking a general question. Personally, what do you think is feminism? From your perspective as a person, before we go to the general understanding of the concept in society, personally, what is your understanding of feminism? Well, if you want to give it a go.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Queer, for having us. I think it's a timely conversation. I cannot believe we're still doing this in 2025. We're still defining and trying to understand what feminism is, but it's also important to understand different contexts, and South Sudan is a completely different context. And I think these conversations, depending on how they are held, will continue to be important, even though they feel like we should know this by now. So thank you for creating space for this. Really, at the core of it, to me, feminism is a movement that sees me. It's a movement that validates me. It's a movement or a philosophy that recognizes my humanity as a person, worthy of dignity, worthy of equal opportunities, worthy of care and love. And to me, yeah, it just feels that way on a personal level, that it is something that I feel like sees, recognizes, and honors me as a person before I can even talk about other people. That to me is what feminism means.
Thank you. Nyajuok?
And again, thank you very much for giving this platform for us to have this conversation. So what does feminism mean to me? It's mean being able, like let's say, being able to recognize that I have a brain, that I can think, I have ideas that I would like to share, and that what I'm bringing to the table is valuable. To me, that's what feminism is that I could be asked, what do you think, Nyajuok, about any topics that men are discussing or anybody else is discussing? It's being recognized and giving that space that I'm being honored, I'm being valued, I'm being appreciated, and I'm also being trusted that I can think just like everybody else. So that's feminism to me. It's being given the space to share what I feel and what I think.
So I like how you've simplified it and personalized it. Now, there's some people who will will not see this, or they will hear this, but they still doubt what feminism is. Is it because they don't value the place of women in society? Or is it because they still have some sort of a different understanding of what feminism is? Because the way you put it, anyone of any good conscience would be able to be interested to say, okay, can you tell me more? But you see, our society still doesn't see it that way. So where is that coming from, given what you've just said?
And you're right. Anybody that really wants to understand what feminism is, truly come to understand that it's not a threat, it's uplifting female in the society. And I saw this a lot when I was doing my book tour in 2022 and 2023. Majority of the male that were supporting me were for girl child education, right? A woman that is educated eventually going to need a platform to speak. She's going to work outside the house. She's going to play a part in the society. And they okay with that. Majority of the men are okay with that until it comes down to their own wife, right? Like my own wife. But they want it for their sisters. They want it for their nieces. They want it for their friend's daughter. But then they don't want it for their wife. And the reason I think that is what the society put in their head already about what feminism is. It's not their own idea, because even the female that are feminists, they have husbands, they have families, and their husbands support them and understand their point of view. There is no issues in that. So truly, it comes down to, it's not really their own idea that feminism is a threat to the society or a threat to their own family. It's what the outside noise is saying. And it's only, majority of them is only come down to their own spouse, not girls in general, because they support girl child education.
So when it's something outside, you want to support it because it doesn't affect you. But when it comes close to home, now it's a red flag. Okay. Aluel?
I feel like we as a people have been through a lot. The decades of war for a system that ties your wholeness, and speaking for men, for example, to authority, to provision, to protection, to all of these big things. I think, particularly maybe for this generation of men, I feel like a lot of them feel stripped of that economically we're struggling. We have been struggling as a country, as a people. So not a lot of men still feel like they fully embody that identity of provision. Protection has gone out the window decades ago as a role that men feel themselves central to. We live in a country where politically a lot of young men's voices, yet they're not shaping politics like they should in other reasonable contexts. So I feel like a lot of things that are traditionally associated with masculinity are not in that frame anymore. And I feel like feminism then becomes a scapegoat for the hanging low fruit that feels like a threat, because if they can't be that, they can't be that, they can't be that. And now you're saying that the only place where any man feels a sense of authority, which is, over women, be their wives, be their sisters, be their, colleagues, that one place where they feel they can exert power and control and question and challenge, you want to take that away, I would be threatened. I would feel threatened 100%. And so I think the resistance or the threat is coming from different places, but then feminism is an easy target, to see as the problem. Let's not point fingers to the government. Let's not point fingers to, the economy that is failing us and the rise of capitalism. But feminism, that one, yeah, we can easily rip it apart. So I feel like it is a scapegoat, to be honest, that it has nothing to do with their lack of understanding of it. They get it. They know what feminism stands for, 100%. But it is that idea of, even this, you want to make me feel like I don't have authority and I cannot do X, Y, Z over my wife, So I think there's a lot of also misunderstanding around what, gender equality looks like in a healthy way, without them feeling like if you're empowered, that means I'm going to be disempowered. Nope, that cannot happen. So I think for me, there's so many factors at play. And then feminists are an easy scapegoat, because I cannot shout at my government, but I can shout at Aluel 100%. Why not? I think for me, there's a lot there, to be honest.
Okay. So if that is the case, if they understand that, then the people in power always get ticked off when someone who has no power tries to claim some part of that power. So people get ticked off. So that's understandable for some people. Now, why do people treat it as either or? If women are saying, okay, all I want is for me to be acknowledged as a human being, for my rights. If I'm qualified as a doctor, I should be paid like the doctor should be paid. With my qualification, my years of experience. So that's what I'm asking for. I'm not asking for more than that. It's just what I am qualified for. So if that is the case, why is it seen as a threat? Because they're not taking away from what men have. Why can they say, okay, where do you fit in within this dynamic? Why is it usually a threat if they understand it?
You know, it's when feminism and the challenge we're having in our society is like the challenge we're having in America when it comes to Black Lives Matter. We had that movement that started several years ago. And in the last few years, it has come to light a lot. And you'll see people shouting, Black Lives Matter. You have had all these power for many years. Now I want to advocate for myself. Just because I'm saying my life matter or Black Lives Matter does not take anything away from your life, right? So it's the same thing that's we are struggling with right now with feminism. We are advocating for something that's only been reasoned in the 60s, right? Like in the it's, for example, in America, I don't know about the other countries. It has been for other countries, but in America in the 1960s is when women were recognized for vote. And not only until 70s and 80s that women start owning lands or having bank accounts and having credit cards. So this is not a very long movement ago, right? So it's young, it's new. People are struggling, especially in our country, in South Sudan, people are struggling to have that understanding and that concept and say, okay, you are a human being just as I am, and your life matter. You want to go to school, go to school. You want to have a voice, have a voice. You want a platform, here's a platform. I'm going to sit and listen to you. It takes absolutely nothing away from the male counterpart, nothing, right? And many men that are masculine and they are confident and they understand who they are and their power are not threatened by feminism. They're not, because they understand it takes nothing away from who they are and what they believe and what they can do for the society. You know, so the threat, like Luel says, is coming outside of the confidence and the ability to feel threatened by this other group of human that wants to also have a seat on the table. That's where it's coming from. But it shouldn't. It should not.
Well,
Yeah, I think I'll pick up from where you've stopped, Nyajuok, because there's a lot to do with insecurity that needs to be worked on the other side of this movement. Because for many people, number one, there's not a lot of examples of systems where equality truly holds what it stands for. We are so used to that if so and so is empowered, that must mean my oppression, you know? And I think that is a mindset we have, that if so and so can go farther, it can only mean I will have to be at the back. I don't think we expand our imagination to a place where your success does not necessarily have to mean my downfall, that we can all thrive, that the world has enough for all of us. You know, that's why we are on this planet, that there is enough for all of us. But I think from all of the systems of oppression we're seeing, what people translate feminism to is that they want to be over men because they're not able to comprehend the possibility that we can be at the same level without one person having to oppress the other person or thriving at the expense of the other person. So I think there is a lot to do with that. And also just, again, like really the way we're also raising young men and boys. You know, if your identity is centered around these things, in situations where you're unable to be those things, then you need an outlet to feel. And so that becomes it. I know men who are unable to provide, you know, and their wives are able to provide, but they cannot be comfortable with that fact being known publicly because they still have to put on that face. And because of that, I know also a couple of women who are experiencing abuse because the man needs to feel like he's still the man, whatever that means, you know? So I think a lot of it comes down to what Nyajuok said about security. Like, you know, do we have enough men that feel, that know themselves, that my worth is not tied to all of these ideals, and I can still be a man regardless of all of these societal ideals. I think a lot of women are coming to terms with that reality, that they can be more than what society has defined them to be or confined them in. The reality is not the same for men.
So can we say that it has a lot to do with how women are placed in society? So someone, as you two said, some people understand, most of the people who are reasonable enough understand what feminism means and what its place is in society. But because they've placed women traditionally in a certain subordinate position, they just want to dismiss it, even if they know, as you two of you said, it's about women's humanity. It's about how it validates women. It's about how it appreciates what women have to offer to society. But they know that, but they want to dismiss it because of traditional understanding of what a woman's place is in society. Does it have anything to do with that also, Nyajuok?
I think it has a lot to do with that as well. Yeah. This is the interesting part, right? This, for me, I feel like this is the traditional roles play a lot in how our men are being very against feminism. Because Aluel said earlier that right now in the society, we know women can do a lot of jobs that men can do. I'm not saying all. There are things that, when it comes to physical power, physically, there's things that only men can do and things that, women is not able to do because of the strength. But if it's come to intellectual, we can do pretty much all the jobs that men are able to do. But then that's not part of the traditional roles that we're used to. And even in the Western world, every family still have traditional roles. Even if they both work outside the home, there's still traditional roles that a woman is, for example, being pregnant and delivering the baby. That's still it's always going to be a woman role to do that. But when it comes to household chores, we're having a really hard time blending, having a woman that's work outside the house and what is she can do in the house and what a man can do in the house. Our women are okay working outside, but our men are very against working inside. Okay. So they still don't want to help with dishes. They don't want to help with the children. They don't want to help. There's a lot of things they still see our women's role in the house. And that is messing up a lot of their mental ability to appreciate their wives working outside the home because they are against that. And our traditions are still saying men don't go to the kitchen. Men shouldn't be where women's are. So all of that, we have a lot of education to do. So when we say women want to be equal with men, we also still understand there are roles that are still very primarily women roles. And that should not be where our focus are when we talk about feminism. I feel like men are very focused on those traditional roles. And that's one of the reasons they're fighting this a lot, because they don't want to do that, right? They don't want to do that. They don't want to be seen doing that. But they're okay with their wives having a career and working outside the house. Like, it's not fair. It's not fair. You can't do both and be successful at both while one person only do one, right? We have to have an understanding, say we are in a modern world where things are changing and changing rapidly. And if we're going to grow as a society and as human, we also have to grow mentally and accept that the society is different. And what can I help my spouse with? What can she help me with? If she's bringing income to the house, then I also might help her in the house with how to handle the household chore. So traditional roles, I think it's a topic of itself that we need to attack because it play a lot of roles in why our people are still very against the feminism.
Okay. So before Aluel weighs in, I wanted to say a few things about whether they actually roles that should be reserved for women. So that is something that we'll try. Are there actually roles that are specifically meant for women? So we'll try to talk about this. And a few years ago, I was in Australia, and one of the things I was trying to wash dishes, and the family members were like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just washing dishes." One of the things they were saying is, you will let other people from the outside, if they're coming, they will insult us. Like they were saying in our language, like you will let people insult us. And I say, to me, it doesn't mean anything. It's just I'm washing dishes. So you're right, Nyajuok. Our society doesn't, it's not even still. Even women would say, okay, no, you shouldn't do that. My son shouldn't do that. So that's just a struggle we are going in, but I think we will challenge that. So Aluel, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, no, I think, and this is probably where there's also sometimes a lot of confusion with our people, that people are not able to differentiate between what are gender roles and what are biological roles, For example, I have 3 babies and I do plan to have another or 2, but I don't think as a feminist, I've ever gone to bed and say, how can we make it so that my husband can be pregnant and give birth the next round? Equality, like that is madness, or breastfeeding, for example, nursing. So feminism does recognize all of these biological roles that heavily take a lot from women. And so what feminism says is that for a woman to be pregnant, it's a risky, life-threatening experience. Society has to be shaped in a way that it values and recognizes that role. And once the baby is here, society needs to also put systems and things, and this is why people are still fighting about maternity leave and how long it should be, because it does benefit society. If you are raising healthy children, they get to benefit society in a whole. If childcare is affordable in countries where there's not a lot of support from communities and other, where there's no communal setting. Feminism is recognizing all of these things and saying, and when the baby comes, the woman has to breastfeed for this number of months. These are biological roles that no feminist is saying we need to be equal in these roles, because those are biological. The same way men are performing other biological roles. But now our people do not understand the difference between what are biological roles and what are gender roles that feminism is challenging. Washing dishes, cleaning the house, care labor when kids are involved, or elders or other people in the house. These are roles that feminists are saying there is no reason to place all of these roles on women. I was not born with a soap or with a mingling stick for you to say, because you were born holding that stick, cooking is your forever life responsibility. God made that, it's insane. And so being able to understand, when we say traditional roles, are we talking about gender roles or what roles specifically? And if we're talking about gender roles, these are, roles that our men have to provide and women and be protect, and women have to cook and clean and take care of children. There is nothing that is biological about caring. And that is something we are taught. I was taught to care. I was not born knowing how to hold a baby. I was not born knowing how to feed a baby. I was not born knowing how to cook. I was taught these things. And so if they can be taught to girls, they can also be taught to men and boys. And we need to think about them that way, that there is nothing that degrades anyone from performing that role. Coming to your question on whether these traditional roles and mindsets play a role in how men resist feminism, 100%. And what I see a lot in South Sudan is people conflate a lot of things to mean traditional roles and to mean culture. And that, for me, is where the problem is, that people are holding on to colonial legacies of customary laws. Our elders did not administer those laws. They were shoved down their throats. And then they became now the standard of how we think we are as a people. I have a problem with that, if we're trying to apply double standards. People are very selective with religious scriptures that they want to pull out of context and weaponize and mix all of that and call it culture. And I'm like, what is exactly your culture? Because we need to unpack that. So there's a lot of confusion around what is traditional or what is historically how we thought and defined things, that has also a lot of influence with just colonial legacies that we're dealing with as a people. Customary laws are left to be stuck, and that's problematic, that you have customs that are not meant to evolve. There is no society where that is even practically possible. But because it benefits you, you have no problem with it, because I can just use that and end the conversation. So I think there's a lot of confusion around what tradition mean for our people, and there's a lot of unpacking to do around that.
You just brought up something that is very fundamental, because social constructs tend to be misconstrued as biological. And that is where many men struggle. So they were born being told men do not cook, and they internalize it and biologize it as if, men should not do that as a function of biology. And that is where we need to do a lot as a people. And I want to bring in patriarchy in this because it relates a lot to it. Now, as a society, what can we do to be able to explain to people what you just explained in terms of understanding feminism as a good for society, in terms of what it has brought women and how it has allowed them to contribute as members of society? So, and also how we can have conversations in terms of understanding what is biological which, as you said, feminists do not deny, and I think they conflate many things. Women do not deny that. What they dismiss is what is biological, what is a social construct being confused with what is biological function. So what can we do as a society?
We need to be open-minded. We need to have conversations like these, okay? We should not dismiss things merely because we disagree with them or we think we know better. We need to have conversations. We need to have platforms like these. The feminism movement is not going anywhere. As long as the society is evolving, as long as education is still fundamental, it's not going anywhere. And our young people, especially the men, they need to understand that the space that had already been created for women is just going to get bigger and bigger. It's going to get bigger. And it should not be a threat to who they are, to their core identity. Women are fighting for their own rights as women. It has nothing to do with a man. Okay. They think we're trying to take over who they are as men, but that's not it. We're fighting for our own lane to be in, to be able to do what we need to do. Women that has education, we're giving a platform to change the world, have made great contribution. And we can name some of those women. And even the men that are against feminism, they still idolize these people. And why? Is because they were giving the opportunity to speak, to implement policies and to do things for this society. And our own South Sudan too, we have women now that we know are making great changes. Who does not want that for their daughter? Who does not want that for their niece? Who does not want that for any woman in their lives? All these men want the same thing for them. Okay. So one thing they have to understand is that the feminism movement is not going anywhere. It's here to stay, and it's just going to get more. For the women that say, you said earlier at the beginning of this conversation, you said, you have some friends that say, I'm not a feminist. Great. They can say that all they want. But the fact that they have the ability to say that to a man, that's a work done by feminism. Okay. The fact that they can go on social media and write and joke and make videos, that's a place given to them by women before them that work hard for them to be able to go in that forum and say what they want to say. So every woman that is able to get up and speak in front of men and say how they feel is already feminism. And she is a feminist. So they have to, I don't know what they think feminism is. And maybe they think just like how the men that are against feminism think. But that's also a lack of appreciation for what was done before them. It's a lot of work that has been done. We appreciate those women. We want to do the same thing for the girls before us, for our daughters. And it's make this society a better place and make this society a better place. Like, again, it's dumbfounded to me that I have people come to me and tell me in my inbox how much they appreciate me, how much they love what I do, and how encouraging they are to me. But then they go on their own Facebook and they talk trash about feminism. I don't understand how our people work when they do that. Because I have people that comes to me and say, go on, I'm behind you, I support you, go do this and this. And then they turn around and do completely the opposite in public,
It is something to do with the human psychology. There's a saying in our language, something to do with the hyena. Hyenas, the mythology is that hyena doesn't eat the human head because the human head confuses, human beings confuse people. When it's raining, they want sunshine. When sunshine, they want rain. So a hyena said, I can eat the rest of the body, but not the head. Because the head, as you said, someone is in your inbox praising you, and then they go outside and they say nonsense about feminism. I think it's part of us as society. And I think being honest, as you said at the beginning, is what we need. I have people inboxing me a few years ago about the coup or the so-called coup attempt. They will say in the inbox, oh, I know there's no coup. And then they go outside and I see them writing, yeah, there was a coup. So it's part of us as a society where we are not honest with what we're saying. So, but I think they want to endear themselves to you, and then they want to go also maintain a public face, which doesn't work. So, Aluel, thanks, Nyajuok.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that Nyajuok said. I feel like we need to get back to the basics as a people, because I find it deeply insulting when people say, oh, feminism is a Western concept, or anything to do with the humanizing of women or dignifying women is foreign to us as a people, as South Sudanese, because I'm like, what do you mean? And I think that is where we need to get at that core of it, because what is it that makes you see something that humanizes another person as foreign to you? You know, what does that say about our values as a people? There is a lot of rich ancestral wisdom in how we have historically dignified women, whether it's Nuer, whether it's Dinka, whether it's, or Jiang or any other ethnic group in South Sudan. There are traces of how we dignify and humanize each other. And so for us to get to a place where we can be so loud and speak in ways that we're championing the dehumanization of the person that you came out of, that is insane to me, So I think we need to get back to the basic of what does humanity mean to us as a people, and then move from that place. A lot of women that came before us have done incredible work. We are fruits of their labor, They did not name it as feminism. Maybe the framing of it is a Western term, but we have historically lived through women that have resisted in so many ways. And so for you to give credit to the West for the labor that even my own mother that raised me to be the feminist that I am is because of the things she taught me. And I think there is a disconnect as well there, that a generation of us that were raised by women who went through unimaginable circumstances wished and raised us to live through better. We see that as the daughters because we were in communication with these women. The son on the other side have a complete different idea of what that means. And this is why you see a lot of conversations around, we need women like our mothers. And I'm like, do you really, because what does that even mean? So I think we really need to get back to the core of defining humanity and what that means for us as a people. Block the noise and come back to that, because there is no man that did not come out of a woman. So for you to call someone that nursed you and brought you into this world to be the man that you are today, Marasakit, blows my mind, So I think we need to get back to that core as a starting point.
Okay.
Can I add something to what Aluel said?
Yes.
There's two words that are used in this modern day now. One is what she said, Western culture. It could be about feminism. It could be about anything, say it. When somebody is against it, they would say that's a Western culture. Okay. Second is the word our culture. This is our culture. And Aluel said it earlier. When a culture or a traditional culture, whether the way we practice, when it benefits the individual, then they hold on to it. You hear that when somebody said that, especially from men, and they're talking about traditional roles, or they're talking about a way to diminish the woman's ability to do something, they say, this is our culture. You shouldn't go against it, or you shouldn't talk bad about it, or whatever it is. They say, this is our culture because it benefits them. If it doesn't benefit them, they would have got rid of it, right? They would say, this is a part of our culture that no longer serve us. We're in a different days, and we need to move on from this or find a way to change that. They would, but because it benefits them, they said, this is our culture, they're holding on to it. Another one is, this is westernized, or you become westernized. This is usually used when you feel insecure, when you feel empowered, or not empowered, for power, when you feel less than of somebody. You said, this is a Western culture. It's the easy way to put that person down. It was used a lot during my time as I was on book tour between 2022 and the 2025. Those two words were used quite a bit. I have never seen them used so much in my life, and usually are used to easily quiet you and avoid the debate that you are willing to have, the challenges that you are willing to discuss. It's a closed mindset terms or reason that people would use just to cut you off and shut you down, so that they don't have that discussion that they know they would lose. So they easy to use those two terms. So nowadays, when I see somebody use that, I don't even go into length to try to explain myself anymore, because I just know they can't reason beyond those two terms. That's all they have.
And also, it comes with no accountability, that now I don't have to be accountable to anything.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that.
It is something that we know happens a lot, where men tend to hide behind culture. And as you said, they cannot even define what culture is. And when people say Western idea, I usually ask them, from when? Because feminism began in the West because of the oppression of women. So some of the things we're talking about were happening exactly the same way they happened in Africa in the West. So women had to define their place. So what we're talking about are human things. As you said, we need to talk about what it means to be human. So these are universal human values that we're talking about. Just because they began in the West doesn't mean they're Western. So they're just human values. Now, if we go to home, for example, and this is what I want to ask you, many women have internalized some of issues of patriarchy, and some of them are afraid if I talk about feminist issues, I will threaten my marriage. How can we have conversations that are very simple, that women can understand that what we're talking about is your respect, that you should be respected? A few years ago when I was in Australia, we were in Melbourne, and we're just a bunch of men in a living room. We're watching TV, and the wife was still at work. So we were just chatting, and the moment she came home at the door, the husband told her, we need tea. She was coming from work. And I looked at him and said, why didn't you say we needed tea? We could have done it. And he looked at me as if I'm from Mars. Like, why would you wait for her to come from work? She's tired. And the first thing you say at the door is, we need tea. And we've stayed in the living room for 2 hours. We could have done it. So how can, and she didn't say anything. She didn't complain. She just went in and made tea. How can we make sure that women also understand feminism is about their respect, their rights, and it doesn't threaten your marriage? How can we make that very simple? Anyone who wants to give it a shot?
Big ask. That's a big ask. Good.
I know.
A very big ask. Because they are real consequences.
Yes.
For pushing back on patriarchy. Women have lost their lives, women have lost their homes, their children, for simply standing up for their humanity. So it's not something that I expect of every woman, because it is not an easy job to be insulted day and night, to be called names, to be dragged through the mud. I think some of us are able to go through it because of just how much investment we've had to do on our mental health. And so it's not something, I do not expect every woman to be at the front line fighting for the rights or even demanding, because women have been killed for saying, I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. And so even for the specific example you were giving, imagine that woman saying no in that context. What would be the consequences after you guys left? There is a huge price that comes with resisting, with standing up, and it doesn't require everyone. A lot of the women, because we are also socialized in the same society as men. So whatever things you're told are the same things we're told as girls growing up. So we've also internalized these things, and it takes a lot of work to say, actually, no, that's not what I want. That's not who I am. It takes a lot. And for many women, I do not blame them one bit, because it is a little safer. Not 100% safe. It is a little bit safer when you just, bury your head in the mud and go on about your day and just accept whatever, crumbs they throw at you for being a good girl or a good woman or a good wife. Life feels less burdensome, though that is at the price of their mental health, of their desires, of their dreams and ambitions. So I think the same way, and this is why feminism focuses on women and girls, because you want to cultivate that agency to get to a place where more women, more girls have that voice. But, it takes time. And so when I see a woman online, a Junubi says, oh, I'm not a feminist, or say all the negative things about feminism, sometimes I want to be mad, 100%. Sometimes I am mad, but then I always get back and I'm like, I get it, I hear you. I would just appreciate if you just be quiet and also do not be an active anti-feminism, because it doesn't serve you in any way. So it is expensive, to be a feminist, to push back. We've seen little girls that have been beaten to death by their brothers because they refuse to marry a particular man. We've seen girls that have been forced to abort children because they got pregnant by someone the family didn't approve of. We've seen women beaten to death in their marriages because they pushed back on certain things. So there are real consequences for this.
Mm. Thank you. I really agree. It's very risky. And this is why we need such conversation. And they will continue. Resistance will be provided. They will resist, and then we'll continue to push until people are able to understand that it's about respect. People pretend they respect their wives, but these are ways in which you show respect for her humanity. And the humanity of a woman should not be explained as a service to a man. It's really sad.
Can I add something before Nyajuok comes in? Just one last thing. And I want to give an example that I was seeing like a day or so ago online. And this is around conversations to do with bride wealth or bride price. And I see people place the responsibility on the bride, to say, but why can, women and girls need to stand up and say they do not want this? And I always ask, in what context in South Sudan does the girl negotiate her bride price or name it or is a key beneficiary of bride price? Because what that does is it makes women the problem, that they are accepting of this when there's so many women that have no choice. How are you going to tell your uncles? And even if you do, how many of them are going to listen to you? So that's just one example where, the responsibility of change is often placed. And I saw this as a result of this other bidding that is going on, the other competition, the second one now that is happening. And I saw someone write a whole thing about how, these girls need to stand up and reject being commodified. And I'm like, on what grounds? Because she's not the one negotiating. She's not the one naming it. And I know women have also internalized that payment of bride wealth to mean it defines their wealth, their worth, that if a man pays this amount of, cattle, then it makes me a worthy human being compared to the others. So I think there are so many situations where we place the responsibility on the woman when she's not the authority in that context. So I just wanted to add that. But yes, definitely there's a lot to do to raise agency, to have conversations, to get more women and girls to be feministly conscious, but that is going to take time.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, because someone actually made a comment when I announced that I'm going to talk to both of you, and he said, "Can you ask Aluel when she was getting married? She's a feminist, but why did she accept the bride price to be paid?" So you've already answered that. I didn't want to ask it, but thank you for yeah. Yeah, someone made that comment. So thank you for answering. I did not want to ask. I said I'll ask, but I have no intention of asking that because I thought it was silly. But you put it really, really well. I think feminists do not want to, overhaul everything in society in an instant, to change everything. And I think that's a misunderstanding you were talking about. So thank you for bringing that on.
Just because we're on that little topic about dowry and bride price, I will add just a little bit to that before I answer your big question. Feminism, we're not here to disrupt all the rules and and all the traditional roles, right? That's not what it is. Bride price, and this is something that the male gender in South Sudan are not recognizing. People like Aluel or people like myself that are advocating for women rights, that we're also advocating for men, right? Like dowry price, I don't know if Aluel is as vocal about it as she is about other women rights, but dowry price is really, really high right now where our men cannot afford to marry, right? And we are very vocal about that and talking about how we can make it affordable for our young men and men so that they can marry each other, right? So there is things that feminists like myself are advocating for that are beneficial, that the men will be beneficiary of, that we don't get credit for either, So it's all about equality and fairness. It's nothing about disrespecting anybody other gender or putting any other gender down. So I will just add that. But to answer your question, change does not require everybody. It does not require everybody. It's the few people that chose to take it upon themselves and pave that way. Oh, people like myself are loyal, like she said, we don't require everybody to stand up for their rights and hold up a sign and disrupt their own homes and houses. We don't want that. We don't want that for them. And not only that is not safe, but it's also, it might not be who they are to be vocal and be able to go and stand up and be on podcasts like this to talk about women's rights. Change does not require everybody. And we do not require everybody to do that either at their own homes or with their friends. They go about their lives. They do what they need to do. There's people out there like myself that love to do this, like to talk about it. And it did not just come overnight. If you go back to our families, probably our families noticed before we even knew that we were going to talk about things like this because the way we were brought up, whether it's our moms or our brother or our fathers, they were open enough to talk to us, to have discussions like these. to give her space to talk. And that's why we become who we are, to be able to be comfortable and says, this is something I want to talk about. This is something I'm passionate about. So it's in who we are. It's something we had grow up talking about or be passionate about. It's something we love to do, and it's not everybody. Okay, it's not for everybody. They themselves or their children or grandchildren will be beneficiary of it, but it doesn't require them to stand up for it. Okay, and of course, if it's anything that disrupts your own homes, then you have to critically think about that yourself. Nobody can tell you what to say or what to do or how to handle that. That's very personal. And that's your decision to make. You know, when you feel like you're safe to speak up, you will speak up when you're safe, when you feel like space is it's good for you to speak up. When the space is not safe, you know the space is not safe. And that might not be the place for you to speak. So all of these things require individual evaluations and decisions. But we're here to say that feminism is not a threat. It's not a threat to the males. As a matter of fact, it's benefit the male gender. It's benefit the whole society. Let's give it a chance. Let's give it more time. Like I said, it's not going anywhere. It's not. So sooner or later, we're all going to come on board with this. And it comes down. You mentioned something at the beginning of this question about respect. Every human person, every human being deserves respect. Respect is the foundation. Whether you're a female or you're a male, you ought to be respected. In conversations, in disagreement or agreement, respect has to be the one that's leading the conversation. I hear a lot that men say they need respect, women need love. There's no love if there's no respect. We all need to be respected. That's what I will say about that, is that when it's safe, those females will speak up when it's safe for them. And if it's not safe, then do what is safe for you, even if it means that you have to be quiet.
I think it's
Just to
yeah.
add, I think Nyajuok, you've highlighted this, that even like the things people are resisting now that feminism is fighting for, give it another 2 decades and they will seem so normal that they cannot believe there was a time when it was uncomfortable to talk about this. You know, the same way now we have so many men that are supporters of girls' education. There was a time when that was such a radical, unimaginable ask, that you want girls to go to school, you know? And these are wins that people don't realize, that we've gotten to a place where so many people see the value of education. You know, so many people see the value of women working also outside of home. So many people see it as a problem when a girl is being forced or being, you know, we still have a long way to go on that for sure. But there is progress. There's a number of people that will openly say, no, I don't agree that, you know, this young girl should be forced, or a 13-year-old should be married, for example. These are things that seem safe and normal. Any woman who is fighting for this, men will agree with you because they think these are now normal things to fight about. But there was a time when they were difficult topics and things to fight. And so even the things that we're fighting for now that are making a lot of men uncomfortable, give it another 10, 20 years and it will be a different time. And if we don't fight for them now, they won't be, you know, that difference that we want to see 20 years from now, where this feels normal, like this feels like it's logic, it's common sense. So I'm not moved a lot of the time or discouraged by the backlash, by the pushback, by the insults, because it is part of the process. Feminism is a movement. Feminism is fighting a system of oppression. And like any movement, it's not going to be a smooth sail. Otherwise, we wouldn't need feminism in the first place. If all of these things automatically made sense, we wouldn't even need to exist, you know, in the first place. Yes, it's frustrating, but it is part of the process. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to ask something about women leaders in South Sudan, because we have incredible women leaders in South Sudan. Do you think they are seen as a special case? Because I've seen people respect them. Are they seen as special case? Or do you think there's still an undertone of disdain that exists in South Sudan? Or do they say, okay, we have the speaker, Nunu Kumba, we have Vice President Rebecca Nyandeng, and then Lago is also, yes. So they are women leaders and they seem, men respect them. Is that seen as a special case and they bracket and say, okay, that's not part of feminism, this is different? Or do you think there is a problem with these women leaders from what you hear?
Can I answer that a little bit? I do want to say what I have noticed is there is a generation there's a generation differences between those that are supporting feminists. They might not say feminists, but supporting women in power or women working or women education, and those that don't. What I'm seeing on my platform is that the young generations, and it's the young generations are the ones that are very, very, very negatively vocal about feminism and how it's a risk to their own society, lives, families. People like Nunu Kumba and her generation and age group, you don't see those people go on social media and become negative about feminism or women in power. They encourage them. They encourage those women to be in those power, to speak up. So for me, there's a generation that I put in a box, like this is the box of against feminism generation. So I truly believe it's a different in generation understanding, and maybe it's the social media influence that making this gap so wide. I don't know what it is, but I don't see people from new generations coming on social media and being very negative about what women represent in power or in society. So yeah, I don't see them.
Okay.
I think there's several other factors at play outside of gender as a concept, if I may say. And I can see different layers or different ways in addition to what Nyajuok has said on this, that there are other systems that come with their own privileges that sometimes we compound and think it's a gender privilege at play when maybe it's not the case. For the women that are in the higher political levels, obviously there's still a lot of negative feeling around that from a lot of men to see women in such higher positions. But then they do have the class privilege, that comes with that. They do have the political elitist privileges that come with that. There are other privileges at play that position them that way. We like the society now has double standards when, for example, I know young women who are like working and are the ones providing for their families or supporting their families. You get to be accorded a different level of respect that you actually can be allowed to be in family meetings. And I have experienced that on a personal level, because I support my siblings. Since my dad passed on, there's just a lot of responsibilities that I've had to assume and take on. And the level of respect, and I'm saying respect in quote because it is only accorded in that concept that you can provide, that because you can take care of this, now uncles can be comfortable with me sitting in some meetings that traditionally I would not be allowed to sit. What is giving me access to that family hierarchy level is not my gender, 100%. It is my class privilege, at that point that they're leaning towards, because there's a benefit that comes with that. And you will see in the same meeting, I've noticed a few times where, they will be listening to me, compared to maybe my other brother that they, and it's a class issue at play. But flip it just a little bit to other key family decision making. And I'm quickly reminded that I'm married and I'm a woman and I cannot be, So I'm just giving those personal examples to contextualize the privilege that for those women, there is a class privilege. They are people that are looking at economic benefit and they're willing to shut down the gender, however they feel. The same people will still tell her you're just a woman, in a different context. But, what is granting them the respect that we see is definitely not because they're women. It is because of the other privileges that come with that. Mama Rebecca is a powerful woman, politically in the history of South Sudan. There are a lot of benefits that come with that. So that respect for some of them, I have seen people respect them because of who their husbands are, not necessarily who they are or who, the leadership profiles that they have built, So there's a lot there. Or they say, oh, because so-and-so is in good books with Kir, and now, she has, access that political level for the women whose husbands are not in the mainstream politics. There is, because of so-and-so. So you see issues around sexual exploitation get thrown around like it's a badge of honor for women and being used as a reason that she has been able to access that position. So no, I still don't see these women recognized, for their leadership, for their individuality. For Nunu, they will say so many negative things. For Mama Rebecca, they're like, she's just there because of her husband's name. They don't see her. They really don't see her. For Josephine Lagu, she was put there because of her husband. And I know so many capable, politically competent women who are leading, but are still not seen. Because it has to be your father's contribution, that's why you're there, or your husband's name. It's not because of you as an individual. So no, I disagree. They do not respect these women. They do not value these women. They pretend to respect these women because of the other privileges that, other class privileges and political titles that come with that, but not in their gender identity. 100% no.
Okay. So we're coming towards the end. I will ask you the last question. But I want to say something about what you just said before I ask the last question. Can we say then that there's a silver lining in terms of change? As you said, if a woman is in a position of power and she's able to provide for the family, then she is considered. Can we see that as silver lining that over time that can help in terms of mitigating the gender issues that we have in society? The attitude people have, the traditionalized roles that we have. So if we said that a woman would be disregarded regardless of what she provides in the family, then that would be really, really difficult to change things. But because they value women who are in power, or they respect them, quote unquote, or they give them a seat at the table because they're providing, and then temporarily maybe they forget about the gender issues. Can we say then that's a silver lining?
We have to hold on to something, right? But it's not what we advocate for. It's not what I advocate for to be recognized for because of the financial benefit that I bring. That's only pertain to my own family. My family might say that, but still, that's not what I want to be recognized for. I want to be recognized for my intellectual ability, for my capability of helping the society bring up something. Right now I'm from New Mexico, in Nairobi now, but I'm from New Mexico. In America, one of the most expensive expenses in a household is childcare. Okay, just having children alone, it is very, very expensive to put a child in daycare so you and your husband can go to work, because now in America, having one household income is not enough to sustain. So both parents has to go to work. And when you have children, it's almost just everything is even. Whatever income you bring in, it goes out to child care. We have a female governor in New Mexico that had just passed a law that child care in the whole state of New Mexico will be free. That has not been done in America. It's the first time a child care is being offered for free, initiated by a female governor, because she understands the struggles that parents are going through when it comes to child care. Things like that are beneficial to the whole society if we look at female ability to change society. That's what I want to be recognized for. I want to be recognized for what I bring to the table, to the society, not the money, the monetary aspect of me supporting my family. Yes, you're right. We need a silver lining to say, okay, I'm going to put my daughter to school because she's going to be able to afford to support herself. I wouldn't be able to, or she's going to be able to support me at my old age. That's a good way to look at it and a good way to start. But it's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is looking at a female gender and says she's valuable. We look forward to what she's going to do one day to this society, the changes she's going to bring, the contribution that she's going to make. That's what we want. That's what we're fighting for. Not merely about the income that we bring. I don't know if Aluel has a different opinion about that, but if we have to hold on to something, yes, we can start with that. But the ultimate goal is not that.
I agree.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I hear that a lot when people say, it makes, for me, let me say it in Jiang, that, like the reason we women or girls have to be respected is because, like it's girls who are, taking care, like the boys are becoming useless. And it's girls who are responsible. And I'm like, that's a crisis, that we're not paying attention to the crisis of what the boys are going through and wanting to switch and say, I'm going to invest in my daughter because I have seen that in this years now, it's girls that are taking care of people. Or when you show up as a girl or as a young woman and showing up for your family, I really deeply get offended when I'm told that, you're like a son to us. And I'm like, why can't you just see me? just see me. Like, I am enough as a daughter. I'm just enough. Just see me, And people say, no, it's a compliment, for them to be able to say that. And I'm like, in what world is that a compliment, So I don't think we succeed by replacing one system with the other. That now capitalism, I don't see, and I think we find a lot of, and especially as elite women that are educated and have formal jobs and are able to make money, I think we escape patriarchy because of the capitalist benefits or benefits from capitalism that we're able to have access to. But if you remove that element, we're still back to zero. So I don't think we can thrive as a society if we try to replace patriarchy with capitalism and say, okay, let more women be CEOs and rich and have money so society can see them. Because without that class privilege, it doesn't take away the gender issues that we need to deal with. So no, I don't see it as anything that is helpful and as anything that we should lean towards, because then you can only humanize me as long as I have the money. And then the moment I don't have the money, I'm back to and these are two different social issues that we're dealing with. So no, I definitely no. I don't feel good about it. And sometimes I've had to sit in those meetings and contribute because, I have to, but I know the basis is not because they see me, old as I am, amongst my siblings. So it's not a nice feeling.
And I think that's a very strong foundation of what feminism is to be seen. Is to be seen as who you are, as a human being, as a daughter of God, regardless of how many dowries you're going to bring tomorrow, how many children you're going to go have, what income you're going to bring in, is to be recognized that you are loved, you are valued, you are respected, and you are seen, and you are important. That's what it is. And our society right now, South Sudan society, does not have those attributes for a girl child. And that's what it is.
Thank you for bringing in the idea of being seen. And I wanted to connect what you said about the new Mexico governor making childcare free. That's really something fundamental, especially for US. That's a big deal. Even in Canada, only one province that has made it cheaper, not free. It's just cheaper. So the former prime minister wanted to nationalize it for all the provinces. We call them provinces in Canada. We don't call them states, but he couldn't do it. He faced resistance. So this is about a woman understanding women issues. Now, some of you have maybe seen the movie, but I like to read the books. I haven't seen the movie yet. Hidden Figures about, what's her name? Shadley. It's now a movie about women in the 1950s and 60s who were called computers. They were mathematicians. They were instrumental in America going to the moon and then going to the space. So they were mathematicians. And by that time, there were no computers. So they were called computers because they could calculate things. So these women were not written about. They were ignored. The only person who made them seen was a woman who wrote a book about them. Now we know who they are. But men took all the credit and they were completely ignored. No man actually decided to write a book about them. So, and this is something that many men do not understand, that when women speak up about the issues you don't see, they don't affect you. So when a woman raises these issues, listen, because they know they go through these things. So I want to thank you, and I think we'll have a lot of more of this conversation because we need them. What you've shared today, it's amazing. I usually tell people when I sit in these sessions, it's like I'm in class, a master class. Like it's really, really an honor for me. Now, I want to ask you your last word to young men and women in South Sudan and to South Sudanese society as a whole. What do you want to tell them in the context of patriarchy, in the context of feminism, and what we've just discussed? And one of you can give it a shot.
A lot, but I will zoom it out. We need to raise our boys. I think we as a society are going through a crisis and we're using feminism or women empowerment as the scapegoat, but there is a fundamental problem that we're dealing with as a country. And, because we're not addressing that aspect of patriarchy, of how, masculinity is militarized in South Sudan, how manhood is associated with all kinds of violence. It is what is sustaining the status that we're in, that politicians can easily exploit, these narratives and recruit young men and we're raiding each other and we're fighting senseless wars and conflicts among ourselves, all because we have this unimaginable ideas of what it means to be a man. And so I think as a people, there's a lot that we need to unpack there and pay attention to, and not just be stressed out that a lot of boys are joining gangs, a lot of boys are not showing up, a lot of boys are, there is a fundamental crisis that is ongoing right now. And I can assure you that it is not feminism that is causing that. And so we need to get back as a society and really define values that shape what it means to raise a healthy young man who is secured, who does not feel that another woman's rise means his downfall. We need to go back to those principles and revisit how we're raising our children, because the children we're raising today are going to be the men of tomorrow. And what is it that we want to see it be different? So I think for me right now, that is a huge problem that I'm seeing, that I think is a gender issue and requires attention in a way that contributes to feminism. It is what feminism stands for, that we are living in a healthy society where both men and women can thrive. It's not to say that we have reached even 40-30% with gender equality with women and girls, but if we're not addressing this other issue that is emerging, then it's going to be double disaster for us, that we're still not able to push women and girls where we want them to be, and then we will also be dealing with this crisis. So I think for me, we need to get back to the basics, and that is what feminism is about: healthy societies that are equally thriving.
What's your last word, Nyajuok?
I think I agree with what Aluel said, but I'm going to take it from personal and development growth perspective. We really need to critically think. We need to have difficult conversations like these. And we need to ask ourselves the hard questions, such as, is this thought I'm having, is it mine? Or is it implanted by somebody else, the society that I come from, or the friend sit around or listen to? Is it really my idea that I'm against feminism, that I think they are destructive to the society? Or is it other people's voice? We need to have those discussions as people, but also individually. People need to sit down and really ask themselves, these questions. Because I truly believe if an individual sit down and really analyze, because again, they know what feminism stands for and what we're advocating for. And if they truly sit with themselves, with their thoughts, I don't think a person would be against it. I don't think so. Because it really does not impede on who they are as a person. It does not. My church teaches us that a society starts with family. Everything is family based. So the tomorrow society is today family. You got to go back to your family. You got to raise good, well-behaved children, because they are the tomorrow society. The same thing we have to be individually ready to change South Sudan, but we have to change ourselves first. Our thoughts, everything starts in our minds, is how we think, the friends we associate with, the conversation we're having. Are we just talking in a group setting and we don't have our own ideas and plans? Or, we need to have those conversations. So again, it goes back to individual responsibility and accountability of who they want to become and what type of society they want tomorrow, and how they can start that today. Trevor Noah had a book called Born a Crime, and I love that book. It's hysterical. It's very funny, but also very educational. There's a chapter in that, and it says, the hood never lets you go, or leave the hood. I don't know if you guys understand the hood. It's American language.
Mm-hmm.
But the hood is the ghetto. When you are from the ghetto, they always want to remind you of where you come from. Even if you become very successful and you making changes in the world, when you come back home and you visit your friends, they always want to remind you of who you are and where you come from and how you're nothing, right? Because they know you. So when he talks about that, he talks about, if you really want to change the world, you start by yourself. And if you live in the ghetto, you're from the ghetto, you have to leave the ghetto. You have to leave the ghetto, go empower yourself, become somebody, be very, very successful and know who you are, and then always come back and help the ghetto, because that's where you come from. But you can never be somebody while you're still in the ghetto, okay? We can apply this in our minds and how we think. We can apply it to actual physical environment. But either way, you have to leave those thoughts for that environment in order for you to become somebody that you truly want to be. So everything starts in the mind. Everything starts with, what do I want? What kind of society do I want? And how do I make that happen? So as long as we have this group thinking, which South Sudan, we do a lot of group thinking, we all walk together, think together, do things together. As long as we still in that environment, we will not see a better environment for us or our children, So that's what I would like to leave to our people that watch it.
Thank you very much. We'll continue, and I'm sure the next one we'll talk about the bride price and polygamy, especially polygamy. And I wanted to end this by saying many of our people confuse the dowry with bride price, because in South Sudan, most of it is bride price, not dowry. In India, it's different. In India, it's dowry because it's the woman's family that pays. I usually say patriarchy has a different way of looking at things. In South Sudan, the man says, I am the man, I pay. It's my pride. In India, they say, I am the man, I benefit. So it looks like the woman is supposed to be the one who is proud for paying, but they don't see it that way. They say the man is more important, so you pay the man. So imagine how patriarchy works in different settings. So it's really, really funny how society works. Yeah. So wherever you go, they twist it to benefit them.